We are live. I will start in Hebrew a little to explain people where we are. אהלן, שלום לכולם, ברוכים הבאים לראיון מיוחד עם מנכ"ל פליפה העולמית שהגיע אלינו, והאמת אנחנו מאוד מתרגשים. דוד איתי פה ועוד. אהלן חברים.
אהלן.
Hey Blake, how are you?
Hey Anatoly, how are you?
Amazing. So welcome to our communities. It's broadcast in many communities, and we're really excited to host Flippa CEO in our communities. I know Flippa, like I told you, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And also this partnership and this interview was like some luck that I like get email from Flippa that I banned, and I send where we have agency, and boom, we have an interview and partnership, and it's amazing. I'm going to put some ads for 1.5 minutes. You will not see, only will see the ad. We will share it. We already have many people with us. Wow, it's going to be, I already see a number of people here, so it's going to be good. 1 minute and we'll be back, okay?
Okay.
1 second.
אני רוצה להגיד תודה לסוכנות ראש ברוקרס, שעזרו לי בכל מה שרציתי, עזרו לי למצוא נכס דיגיטלי כמו שצריך, עונה לכל הצרכים האישיים שלי וכל הצרכים העסקיים שלי. תודה מיוחדת לעוד שפירה, שליווה אותי בכל התהליך. אני מקווה שניפגש עוד בעזרת השם בעתיד.
כמה מילים על טוליק, טראסט ברוקר, החשדניסטים, מקצוען אמיתי, המלצה חמה שאני רוצה לתת.
מה קורה חברים? אני ג'ון. אני היום את האמת רכשתי איזה נכס קטן וחמוד מטוליק ועוד ודוד, שהם באמת עושים תיווך של נכסים דיגיטליים. ממליץ בחום, באמת כיף לעשות איתם עסקאות, יש להם נכסים ממש טובים, וממליץ לכם, אם אתם מחפשים מקום אמין, זה המקום.
אני טולי, כמו שראיתם, זה לא אני אמרתי, אנשים אחרים אמרו את זה. יותר מחפשים לעבוד עם מקצוענים, אנשים שאפשר לסמוך עליהם בתחום שהוא מאוד רגיש של נכסים דיגיטליים. מוזמנים להשאיר פרטים, אנחנו סוכנות תיווך, אנחנו לא בעדכם או נגדכם, אנחנו מתווכים את העסקאות ומוצאים סיל למכסה. אצלנו אין משרדים מפוארים שאתם שלמו עליהם, ברור לכם שאתם משלמים משרדים מפוארים של כל מיני סוכניות אחרות. תשאירו פרטים, אם אתם רוצים להשקיע, להשכיר, לשכור, למכור, לקנות, ואז the brokers. יאללה ביי.
So, welcome aboard, Blake. Thank you for being here. It's an honor to have you here. And in this live, we would like to ask a few questions about digital assets, to learn about Flippa, and to know a little bit about you. And we are very glad for this partnership together with Trust the Brokers and Flippa. It's a very good opportunity for all of us, and especially for the Israelis market, to have someone that will handle their brokerage and their digital assets. And let's start. We are going to have a lot of people here. We already have some questions in the live. We are live now in six, right? In 6 different groups.
Eight.
8 different groups. So it's amazing. We're expecting for many questions. So people, when you get inside this live, please comment, say hello when you're coming in, say hello to Blake, and let's start with some questions from us and from you. So first question, tell us a little bit about you. Where have you started? What did you do before Flippa, and what is your position now?
Yeah, I can absolutely answer that question. Firstly, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be speaking to you all, Tolek, David, and Olhad. Thank you so much. It's nice to be connected with your community too. We do see lots of Israelis on our platform, and that's really exciting. The digital real estate is truly global. I think you're all joining from Israel, and I'm here in Melbourne, Australia. So that's a long way away, but we're all connected by a love for digital assets and digital real estate. So I've done many things in my career, most of it in the digital economy. So I started out at Lonely Planet. Many Israelis know Lonely Planet. You're very good travelers, just like Australians. And so I started my career at Lonely Planet, which is obviously a global guidebook publisher with a very, very big digital presence. And I was working for them both in the HQ here in Melbourne, Australia, and then in the US before they were acquired by the BBC, where I did some work as well. I then moved to a startup. It was a travel startup in Silicon Valley, and I was based in San Francisco for nearly 6 years before starting my own online business, which was, it took many forms. First and foremost, it was a marketplace to buy and sell specialty food. And so shopfront owners could set up digital stores within our marketplace environment. And that worked really well, but not well enough for me to get an exit on. And so I moved on to a couple of gigs after that. I went to Xero, which is a small business accounting software company built in the cloud. And that's now one of the most successful global SaaS businesses. So I had the pleasure of watching that grow. I then worked and ran a business called Luxury Escapes, which was back in the travel industry. And that was an online flash sales business, which we scaled to around $300 million in annual revenue, which was fantastic before the board and the founders here at Flippa tapped me on the shoulder about 3 years ago. And I've been here now in the role as CEO for some time and enjoying the digital real estate ride. And Flippa's doing a good job, and it's awesome to see the community so excited.
Amazing. So let's know a little about Flippa, what many people in Israel know about it. I personally already used it like 6 years ago.
Yep.
And many people in Israel are interested in buying digital assets. Only yesterday we put some posts in investor community.
Yep.
And it was like many people say, hey, you don't really can buy yourself. You don't have the knowledge. And in Israel you have, I guess, like 10 companies. What they give like opportunities to invest in digital assets. Some of them very close to scams. And all this area of digital assets, because it's very new, so people are afraid.
Yep.
So how you see Flippa from the day it starts and like today, and what the kind of buyers who come there, and what the new things that you see in the last years when you don't, maybe like 6 years ago was like nothing like this.
Yeah, so great question. We are obviously in the digital real estate industry. We are a marketplace to buy and sell digital real estate. And so what that means is that business owners who own sites, stores, apps, and online businesses in general can list with the help of a broker like yourselves or directly on flippa.com and get connected to the world's largest and most vibrant buyer and investor base for digital real estate. And the reason that's become so exciting and interesting for many people is, one, people have been buying and selling businesses for hundreds of years. It just has not necessarily been in the digital economy. So the practice of buying an asset is well known to many people. So that's piece number one. It's familiar territory. Piece number two is that the returns in the digital economy right now are very favorable. So if I buy an asset for $150,000 and that asset is producing $60,000 in annual net profit, and I continue to run that asset for the next year, and I'm able to get the same performance out of that asset as I had, as the previous owner had, well, that's a 40% return on investment. And that's very significant.
Why it's like this? Because people are afraid, because like, you know, when you don't know everything, so automatically the value it's much lower for the assets, and people are afraid to buy. You think is the reason why it's the return so high these days?
I think the reason the return is so high is because we're still operating in a fairly immature industry. I think that valuations will push up over time, just like they do in any other asset class. But because the industry right now is dominated by a relatively small group of buyers and investors, the competition for assets isn't as great as it one day will be. And of course, as more business owners start to recognize that it's easy to start, it's getting easier to grow, they're all going to want to extrapolate value for their time and effort over X number of years. And so there'll be more digital assets in the marketplace, particularly as the platforms which underpin these digital assets continue to grow. So Shopify, Amazon, BigCommerce, Wix, Squarespace, WooCommerce, WordPress, the iOS and Android app stores, the transaction and payment gateways that power SaaS businesses like Stripe, and the list goes on and on and on. There are hundreds of millions of digital assets that will enter the market at some point in time in the future. And so what Flippa is doing is providing a gateway and a pathway to exit for business owners. Now, that pathway to exit is not unfamiliar. That's an industry that has existed many times before. But what Flippa is doing is breaking down the barriers to entry and enabling that exit opportunity for assets that are small as well as bigger, more mature assets, and then connecting them with less friction to buyers who are interested in that particular type of asset, be it a SaaS business, an Amazon store, or any other that I've previously mentioned.
I like this word less friction, because it's basically all the secrets of the all good platforms. Where it's make easy to people to communicate and make business, and basically make all this process more easy, because when you try to sell it, even in Facebook groups, so you don't know like who is the buyer. In Flippa you have like verification. It's still not perfect from my experience.
Yes.
It's still not perfect, and you need to check it like 100 times. If you buy something, you can't trust on this verification, but still you know who is the guy who who make business with you. So it's amazing.
And it's like any other transaction, right? You have to do due diligence, or if you're buying a car, you have to take it for a test drive, or if you're looking at a piece of traditional real estate, you might get a building inspection, right? There is commonalities in buying digital real estate, and it's quite analogous to buying traditional real estate. You have to choose what you want and where you want, which is the equivalent of business model, and then the age, and then price point, which is your budget. And then you ultimately have to inspect the asset and make sure it's fit for purpose.
I see.
So how people can be sure that all the process is going good, the money, the ownership process, everything. They ask me that all the time.
Yeah.
The flow of the
flow. I list the digital asset. Now how Flippa helped me to move it on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. So firstly, a listing will get matched to a relevant buyer base. And so what we do is we build profiles against our buyers, and that all happens. We request that detail from the buyers, and then we match them up programmatically. And so we're not a brokerage. You guys do an extraordinary job. That's why we're in partnership together. What we are is a technology company, right? So we match up programmatically. And then from there, there's a negotiation that plays out. And the negotiation happens ultimately in many different forms. But our discussion forum and the technologies that we're building into the discussion forum make that nice and easy, because you've got a paper trail. It's digital, but it's a paper trail of all of the engagement. And what's amazing is the average seller on Flippa sees 100 messages between themselves and the buyer when they ultimately transact. So there is a lot of back and forth. And that's important, that people need to understand. When you're spending $5,000, $10,000, $5 million, these are it's a relative term, right? It's a relative number. For some people, $5,000 is a lot, and for some people, $5 million is a lot or very little. And so, regardless, it's a very involved purchasing and or selling experience. So that happens, and that's happening on the platform as well as through community, as well as through Zoom or WhatsApp or wherever else the buyer and seller choose to communicate. But ultimately, where Flippa comes in is we provide the end-to-end service. So you can place the offer on the platform, and once that offer is accepted, we will connect you with a network of services. So we can connect you with escrow. It's fully integrated. And our customers get preferred rates through escrow.com as a result of that integration. We have legal services partners. For those people who don't want to use the legal services partners, which are lawyers, we connect them with templates. And we have LOIs, which have been written by lawyers. We have asset purchase agreements. And we have all sorts of documentation, including checklists to go through for due diligence, and a lot of material that helps a buyer understand where they are in the process and what to do next. We can connect them with due diligence partners that we have integrated into the platform. I mentioned legal, I mentioned escrow, and the list will continue to go on as we understand and appreciate the complexity of the sales experience. But the key thing is that the minute somebody chooses not to take up those services, you are choosing to be a cowboy. And so it's difficult for us to handhold you and protect you outside of that environment. We don't charge buyers any fees. So buyers are rewarded categorically to use the Flippa service. Yeah. And sellers, in turn, they pay us a success fee when they sell, much like they might pay you a success fee when they sell. And so you're there to help them, just as our platform is there to help them. And so as long as the buyers and sellers are operating within the constraints of the platform and using the guidelines and toolkit that we provide you, everyone's looked after.
Let's talk about evaluation. So what is the evaluation process? How do you evaluate different assets, like between Amazon and Shopify store, dropshipping, to a sustainable business? How does it work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have, I guess, two valuation functions. We have let's be honest about what it is. It's a chatbot. And the chatbot basically looks at comp data, so comparison data for assets which are similar to yours, which have sold on the platform. And it continually uses that comp data to update valuations, and it looks at a couple of factors. It looks at many factors. There's like 15 to 20 different factors that go into the valuation algorithm. But we look at business model, we look at age, we look at revenue, we look at expenses. In the case of a content website, we'll look at domain authority. In the cases of a SaaS business, we'll look at churn, we'll look at LTV, we'll look at ARR. In the case of an Amazon business, we'll look at number of units. We'll look at seller ratings, seller reviews, and these are all built into the valuation algorithm, and that's getting smarter each day. The second use is through pricing of the asset. And so we provide a range. And the reason that's important is because ultimately, a valuation is not determined by Flippa. A valuation is not determined by anyone but the buyer who's interested in your asset. And so, of course, the industry is now commenting on industry multiples. But ultimately, this comes down to many, many factors. And so there is a very important aspect of the sales process, which is, are you fit for sale? Do you have standard operating procedures in place to ensure that the new owner can take over your business seamlessly? Have you been operating for long enough for a potential and prospective buyer to understand seasonality? Do you have a strong enough relationship with your suppliers to ensure that there's no risk in the supply chain? So there's multiple factors, and valuations are ultimately simply representative of historical sales data. And then it comes down to the makeup of your individual business as to whether you will achieve that multiple, less, or more. I hope that helps.
I think we saw it in our experience. Many businesses are not sell on the right time. I guess you also see it in Flipa because it's the same. When they go down, they start to think to sell the business to take something, and every day their business cost is less and less and less.
Yes.
And I don't know how you see it in Flipa, but it's happened for us a lot, where we see businesses like e-commerce stores, they stop to sell and put the business for sale and hope to get the price they think they need to get it, and every day it passes, they have less chance to get it and it go down. You also see something like this in your platform?
Yeah, every day. Every day. The best time to sell is when you've got a business which is considered sustainable and scalable. And so hockey stick growth isn't necessarily great either. It sounds great because we've all read so much literature around the next great unicorn, of which you all in Israel produce so many. But that's a different type of asset. That's a different type of business. What we're talking about here is an asset that someone can own and run to either supplement their income, replace their income, or if they're an investor, build a portfolio strategy around. And that's different to a unicorn growth trajectory. You're better off selling when you've found a very, very consistent pathway to sustainability. And so kind of a little bit of a curve up and to the right, or I think I was going left, depending on which way which way you're looking at it, but you get the point. We have some we have some data here. So the average business that sells on Flippa is 4.38 years old.
Again?
So that's really 4.38 years old. So let's say 4.5 years old, right?
Yeah.
And so that's quite important for people to recognize, because what that means is if you think about COVID and you think about the growth of all of the platforms which enable people to start and grow, we mentioned them before, right? Shopify, BigCommerce, Wix, WooCommerce, and the list goes on. All of those new business owners that have come into the market over the last year, they're going to enter the market in 3 or 4 years. And that's really exciting because there's more assets than ever before. But it's also important that sellers recognize that you don't start a business and in 3 months, 6 months, or even 12 months get 3, 4, and 5 times net profit multiples. That just doesn't happen. It can happen, but it's an edge case. It's an anomaly. It's not standard.
You're right.
So what you say is that you recognize a trend that growing up with many stores established right now, in this year in particular, and then in a matter of 4 years from now, the digital asset brokerage will be booming, right? That's what just you said. So we are just on time to enter the market.
We're all in the right business.
Yeah.
It's going to be really big, right? It's no different to any other asset class. There's a period of time where the early adopters understand it and they approach with caution, then they invest madly. And then as a result, the rest of the market follows. And I think, David, you will see exactly what you just said, that you've got a very, very big industry playing out before your eyes.
Amazing.
So it's the time for everyone that listen now to invest on a digital asset, because it will be very, very popular and trendy when in the next few years. What do you recommend a new entry person that came into the market now, that looks on the digital asset market and he wants to figure out his way? what will be the best tip you can give someone that just entered now to the market? Maybe he wants to establish his own business. Maybe he wants to open, I don't know, a lead website or a content website. Yeah. What kind of website do you recommend? And how can you catalog the people, the different personality on the different assets? You know, it's, not everyone can do e-commerce, but people can do content website or a lead website or Amazon website. How do you categorize it?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is that people need to enter cautiously. So if you are really excited about the space and you have set aside $50,000 or $500,000, allocate 10% of that initially to your first investment and learn from that experience. Don't go all in initially, because it is new for many people. And so what we're talking about here is acquisition entrepreneurship. And so as a result, you need to make a decision as to the type of business model that you are interested in, and then make sure that you have the skill set, or at least can hire people who have the skill set to run the business at least as well as the current owner is running it. And so what's really important then, therefore, is to ask the owner what goes into the day-to-day running of the business. What is their secret sauce? Are there any skeletons in the closet? If they spend money on Facebook, is it a matter of the fact that they've got a lot of experience buying ads on Facebook? Because that sounds easy, but it's not easy if you're new to the ecosystem.
Yeah.
If it's a SaaS business and it's got a high churn rate, are you comfortable trying to build a customer experience around the product such that you can limit that churn rate? Or are you going to invest in the technology to improve it so that you limit that churn chance or risk? So it comes down to picking a business model, limiting your budget, and understanding what skills you need to optimize the asset, and or at least run it just as well as the previous owner.
I must say something for new buyers who don't have experience, and it happened to me when people ask me about some business. We now, for example, have some Facebook group. In Flipa, we don't sell Facebook groups, so we are very, very good in Facebook groups because we are owners of Facebook groups, so we have a good understanding. And Facebook group, it's crazy digital assets, and not always make money, but the power of Facebook groups are amazing these days.
Yeah.
So to consult with somebody who is not the seller, take somebody paying like money for 1 hour consult. We also give this service like external service, and know from this expert what he think about the asset.
Yeah.
And not make everything by yourself.
Yes.
And maybe, I don't know if Flippa give this service of external advisor. You have some service like this of external advisor or something like this?
We certainly know lots of people that can provide the service layers. We don't have a formal connection service. It's not a natural pathway for us just yet. But if someone was to ask us, can you please connect with an SEO expert? We've got this monster community, 3 million users, and they're all in the digital economy. They know so much. And so if someone was to ask, we could connect. And I think that's really important what you do. And I think that's outstanding. What a great service to buy something and then ask you all as experts, how do you now get the most out of it?
Yeah, when we make the deal, when we are the connector, so we can advise because we have interest. But when we from outside, when somebody asks us, and already 2 times I saved people money, and it was so easy. I only look on it, and I saw it, and I told him it was like a 2 minutes call. He paid for 1 hour, but in 2 minutes we solve it, and 10 minutes we talk after it why he don't need to do it. But again, if you don't have the experience, you can't know, and it's very easy to manipulate you with a lot of numbers, and the important things you don't see. So I think it's advice for everybody here who want to buy any business. Or David, you want to ask to show
some questions from the audience. So let me put the questions on the screen. So you already talked about the trend that you are going to see, like that we are going to see in the next 4 years. But let's talk about 2 years from now. Where are we going to be stand in the digital assets area?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that what's likely to happen is there will be more buyers in the market. There will therefore be a lot more competition for assets. And as a result, valuations will push up a little bit. I don't think they're going to push up a lot, but they might push up around, I'm completely guessing, but if I would say maybe 8 to 10%. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is you'll see a variety of digital assets available to purchase. And at the moment, what you see mostly is content sites, Amazon stores, Shopify businesses, obviously they are e-commerce, iOS and Android apps, right? They are the most common 3 or 4 asset types available. But I think you mentioned before that you can buy Facebook groups. So I think that what you will see is a very different asset type available in the marketplace 2 years from now. And that could be newsletters, right? So there's a big market around the communities that live and breathe and consume these newsletters. And so still one of the best ways to communicate is via email. So if you can buy an audience that consistently consumes content in a digital email context, obviously it is digital, in an email context, that'll be an industry unto its own. So that's one thing. Potentially you might see things like Instagram accounts, YouTube channels. You might see, obviously we've heard about non-fungible tokens, right? And the movement around the digitization of assets that can be purchased in a crypto form, utilizing the blockchain to encrypt ownership. So it's going to change a lot. Ultimately, what I think is the most exciting is that small business ownership is respected today more than it has been historically. And so that's because you've got this next generation individual who wants to be a business owner. And so I think that there's a maturity and a greater competency for the average small business owner today, which means as buyers and investors, we should see better quality assets also available in 2 years.
Cool.
We have here another great. Oh, take this.
I put another question. Is there a future plan to improve asset due diligence by the platform? If so, can you elaborate more about it?
Yes, we are always looking to improve really 2 things. 1, verification of the asset, and then 2, due diligence. And so let's talk about due diligence. So right now, and only about 4 months ago, we launched Flippa Due Diligence, which comes in 3 forms. You can buy due diligence in the form of a red flag report or a more detailed 3-year look at financial, traffic, operational history. And so that is a new service that Flippa now offers. So that's a key piece. What we'll do in the future as well is we will connect more data sources. And so at the moment on the platform, you can see that a seller who owns a WooCommerce store can connect to WooCommerce, and we pull down the data and we provide insights around that data. Average order value, number of orders, refund rate, absolute number of orders, and the revenue that relates to. We pull down Stripe for SaaS businesses, and we calculate churn, and we calculate LTV, these types of things, obviously MRR. We pull down QuickBooks Online. If you're a QuickBooks Online seller, you can connect and pull down your general ledger and your P&L, your profit and loss statement, that is. And so we will continue to connect data sources. we have AdSense, we have Google Analytics, we have SEMrush, we have WooCommerce, we have Stripe, we have QuickBooks Online. So that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. The list goes on. We have a product roadmap around. And so that will help, because ultimately once a seller connects to their source, it's easier for a buyer to understand the performance of that asset.
Okay, another question. In many cases, buyers and sellers meet at Flippa but makes the deal outside of Flippa. How do you manage against this kind of cases? There are many scammers that are trying to sell fake assets. I think that it's the thing that scares the most, the users the most. How do you handle against those scammers?
Part number 2 answered part number 1. I'll explain. So firstly, if you are doing deals outside of Flippa, you're cheating Flippa of its core service. And so send me an email. I'd love to know who you are. Circumvention is obviously against our terms of use, and ultimately it means that buyers and sellers are less protected by the Flippa service proposition, which is really critical. It's there for a reason, and we are the least expensive place to buy and sell digital real estate in the world. So there's no real reason, unless you're a bit of a cheater, to go and do that outside of the Flippa environment. That's piece 1. Piece 2 is, if you do deals off platform, then you are putting yourself at risk. And so the comment about there are many scammers, there hasn't been a case of fraud on Flippa in 14 months. So there is very, very clear guidelines around what can and can't be listed on Flippa, and a team in marketplace integrity, including a team that is in post-sales enablement, to look at any red flags and make those red flags known to buyers, and then also assist with the escrow process, such that if your money is sitting in escrow, it's not at risk. Your money sits in escrow until you take possession of the assets, and you even have an inspection period, which can be dictated by you as the buyer. So there are very few scams on Flippa. There hasn't been a case of fraud in 14 months. There was some cases of iOS and Android owners that were creating app copycats. These were called reskins. Reskins are now prohibited on Flippa. So no iOS or Android app publisher can list a reskin app. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, thanks. So another question, we talked about it already. If you want with a few words, where do you believe that the multipliers will reach during the next 2 years? So we talked about it, you answered already. Let's move to the next question. Can you share your 2 cents regarding the potential of selling non-English assets on Flippa? Entire flippers don't touch such deals, even though Spanish, Portuguese businesses are exploding. What's Flippa's takes on this?
Yeah, this is a wonderful question. There are opportunities for all sellers and buyers in the digital retail ecosystem on Flippa or otherwise. We translate Spanish language businesses. So you have the English listing and you have the Spanish equivalent. Unfortunately, right now on Flippa, you can only list and price in USD. And so you're uploading your financials in USD also. That's not a great user experience. So apologies for that. Ultimately, our view on non-English language speaking assets is come to Flippa. We can absolutely support you. If it means that you have to translate yourself, that doesn't necessarily mean there's not a buyer for you. Flippa has buyers all over the world. If it's a Spanish asset, we translate Spanish only because we have Spanish speaking staff. If we had Chinese speaking staff, we'd also translate the Chinese assets. So yes, it's a big opportunity. It is exploding. the digital economy is exploding everywhere, and someone needs to make sure that sellers and buyers are serviced really well in that context, and hopefully that's us.
And I'll just add to this that if you have an asset that you want to list and it's coming from an Israeli guy, and yeah, that's exactly what Tolik wants to say. So we will help you to list your asset, and we'll translate everything, and we'll prepare it and do a very, very professional listing for you. Just connect us, and we will help you.
Yeah, wonderful.
We can say, Blake, about the partnership we're going to have with Flippa in the next months, right?
I wanted to keep it to the last question
okay.
and ask Blake, how does it see our partnership together and what is offered to the Israelis? Let's keep it to the last question.
Okay.
So another question, do you plan to push an investing model by investors on digital assets such as Empire Flippers as launched recently? So there is a conversion between, trying to compare the Empire Flippers.
Yeah, so the guys at Empire Flippers are good guys. They're different. They're brokers. They call themselves a marketplace, but it's not. When you inquire, they're a brokerage. They do a great job, like you guys do a great job as a brokerage too. We're a marketplace. We won't have that model. Chatted to the founder of Empire Flippers maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago and congratulated him on the launch of that. But that's not for us, that's for them. We are doing some really interesting stuff around lending and finance, and there'll be some announcements about that in the next couple of weeks, actually.
Okay, last question for now. How do you deal with sellers raising the bids and what the buyers can do about it?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I'm not sure it's something that technically it's possible that the seller is raising his own bids.
I know about it. I must say something. 6 years ago, I make shield bidding in Flippa. It's prohibited.
That's why you got banned.
No, not now. 6 years ago. I don't tell about it.
He was young and
when I start my way in our business, and Flippa, I know what he asked, okay? Yeah. Flippa have very good system to find, it's called shield bidding in Flippa, right? Is the name. And I don't know how, but Flippa know to recognize that people are racing, right?
Yeah.
So
we have a range of technology which I won't reveal. So it's almost impossible. You'll get banned immediately. You probably get away with it for about 3 minutes. So it doesn't really happen. If you see it, please feel free to send me a note directly, blake@flippa.com. I'd take absolute pleasure in banning that individual. It shouldn't happen. What you can do on Flippa, obviously, is you can sell as an auction or you can sell as a classified. And a classified means you're setting a price and it's open to negotiation, and an auction means that buyers are obviously bidding up based on the value of that asset and how they ascribe that value. So, yeah, buyers don't need to worry about shield bidding because it basically doesn't happen. And where it does, the seller will get banned.
I can agree if it was 6 years ago, so good system. So today, I guess it's like 10 levels better when 6 years ago.
It's very good. I mean, we see everything that's happening.
And also,
that's the benefit of being a marketplace, right? We're a technology company. That's where we invest our money.
And if you see some assets, but it's not the price you want to buy, so it's not relevant for you. So it's not need to be manipulate yourself if somebody raised the price.
Yeah, it typically, I think in the past when it did happen, it was also on quite low value assets, which is fine because people are obviously interested in lower value assets too. But like anything, be cautious, notify Flippa where you have any difficulties, and we'll make sure that we investigate and take care of it.
Amazing.
Let's talk about the Israeli market, how Flippa sees the Israeli market, how many buyers or sellers did you see the past few years, the past months? So let's talk a little bit about Israel and Flippa.
Yeah, great question. You're putting me on the spot, so I'm quickly going to the database to have a look. But the reality is we see both buyers and sellers out of most developed nations and developing nations. But if I go back to January and look to current day, I can tell you very quickly that it looks like there have been, doing a quick count, my apologies, there have been 116 assets from Israel go through our valuation tool since January 1. So that gives you some indication.
Nice. So basically, compared to different, the population in Israel, it's only like 10 million people, or maybe a little less. So the Israelis is very involved in all the digital industry.
Yeah. And if I look through the asset types here, I can do a quick analysis. It looks like, just doing some filtering here. It looks like, yeah, interestingly, so what did I say, 116 or something? There was only 4 apps. There were 37 content sites. There were 53 e-commerce businesses, and that includes Amazon. The Amazon piece of that made up 12 sites. There were
we upload 2, so we are 2 of them.
Great. And there are also 10 SaaS businesses.
Nice.
So what will be like, do you see the evaluation, if you can say roughly, what is the biggest asset evaluation that you see on this list?
The actual single biggest asset?
Yeah.
In Israel that has gone through.
Yeah, out of this 116 lists, what will be like the biggest one of them?
So it will be, it looks like around $9 million.
Wow. $9 million.
You already launched the list?
Sorry, what was the question?
You launched the list?
Did they list?
The $9 million list is already published on Flippa?
No, it's not published. So that data there is, we have off-market deals, we have the deals that are available on search, and then we obviously have a valuation pool, which is a group of people who are considering selling, in some cases not considering selling at all. They're just trying to understand the value of their assets so that they can make business decisions. And as we mentioned, if the average asset is 4.38 years old, some of those assets that have gone through there also need time to mature. So let's
explain to the audience what is our partnership about. So let's take, for example, this $9 million asset, okay? It reached out to you to get evaluation, then something happened in the middle or it didn't continue, then you, in our partnership, we are getting from you the connection, the contact person of this digital asset. We are contacting this asset owner, and then we're trying to understand what happened and why it didn't continue with listing this asset on Flippa. Then we're trying to see if we can help him do it with our connection and with our investors, try to match between this owner to a potential investor. And then if we manage to make this deal, then Flippa and us are earning from the deal. Okay, taking our commission. So that's the in big lines, the partnership between us. We're helping Flippa to continue with asset that stopped in the middle of the process. In Israel, yeah. For now, it's only in Israel. Hopefully, in the future, even other countries. But we're helping both sides. So in one side, we're helping the seller to complete his listing and helping him to fulfill this potential exit. And in other in other end, we're helping Flippa and our brokerage agency to grow even more. So that's a win-win partnership between us and Flippa. How do you see our partnership, like moving forward?
Yeah, so it's super exciting because ultimately we want small business owners, digital small business owners all over the world to benefit from our platform and ultimately find a pathway to exit. And we aren't in Israel, and we don't have staff operating out of Israel. So for those sellers that are looking for the support of experts, we are delighted to partner with your expertise and help those sellers do what they need to do, which is find a pathway to exit and connect with a buyer who's interested in their asset. And so if through a partnership we can help sellers do that, that's what we're in the business to do. We're in the business to help our small business owners find a pathway to exit. And you guys are helping us do that, so we're excited.
Amazing. I'm also very excited from this partnership. I think all the investors in the community are going to now get much more options for assets in general. And we have a lot of type of investors want something particular, and now going to be like more range of assets available. So it's good news for all the community that watch us.
Yeah.
I want from you, before we end, some story that you remember about some big deal that you can't forget what happened in Flippa. You have something like this? I'm sure you have.
Yeah, I mean, there's some beautiful stories that happen on Flippa. I seem to always go back to the same ones, and I think it's maybe just because I've built, as a result of the story, I've built a personal relationship with some of these people. But there's a couple. So a gentleman in New York, his name's John Chen. He bought an asset on Flippa for $7,500, and he sold it 2 years later for $550. That was an e-commerce business called blushandbar.com. It's in the female jewelry sector. And so that was outstanding because he was just so ecstatic and excited. And since that time, he's taken that $550 and he's reinvested it on the platform and bought 3 or 4 assets. So that's really great. And I think one thing to realize about the industry is that sellers are buyers and buyers are sellers, and that most buyers are repeat buyers. 38% of all of our buyers are repeat buyers. They buy more than one asset, which is great. So that's story number one. There's also a great crochet business. The lady who owned and run that business, it was a crochet blog. And she ultimately sold that in a very short period of time. I think it was 72 hours. She would prefer that we don't reveal the selling price, but it was just near 6 figures, and she was retiring. And so to sell a near 6-figure online asset in 48 or 72 hours and take that money to the bank as you go into retirement, that's a really nice, beautiful human story. And that's what we love. That's what we're in the business to do. And so that's why we are democratizing the exit, because ultimately it doesn't matter if it's small, it doesn't matter if it's big. Everyone deserves the opportunity to enter the market.
Amazing.
Beautiful story.
Yeah, it's totally amazing. And when I think about it, some people buy a business in Flippa, and after a few years, they'll sell the business in Flippa, right?
Yeah, it happens all the time. We see the assets.
It will happen to us soon also.
That's why it's called Flippa. They are flipping the business. So, yeah.
We are already, from our experience, but not so big experience, we already see people who sell with us. They already plan to sell more with us and connect us like colleagues, but going to sell with us. So it's, I guess in Flippa, it's crazy because it has so many already buyers and flippers, but already also happened for us because people trust the platform and trust what they see and simply your comments.
They trust the brokers, Tolik. They trust the brokers.
Trust the brokers, yes, it's our name. Trust the brokers.
So that's
awesome.
So we have more questions before we finish?
No, we answered all the questions. I think we are good to release Blake to his rest of the day. Blake, thank you very much for being here. We are excited with our new partnership. We're going to start publish the new listings very soon. And hopefully we'll do a great job together and we'll grow together, you know. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Blake.
Thank you for all watchers. The questions are amazing. You know, the knowledge of people around are very direct. Like it's also crazy that they know what to ask. And I think our community, a lot of experts in digital assets. And I really can say for everybody, start to learn about it. Even open some Facebook group, Instagram page, start to some website. I think to make content website not need amazing knowledge. You can learn SEO and start to grow your assets. So it's a good idea start today because like Blake said, in 4 years it's going to boom. So start it now. Thank you very much. I'll finish.
Bye. Thank you, Blake.
Bye-bye.